All right, so we have talked a lot about the conflict in Israel and Palestine on this show, and I know for myself at least, and many other members of the left wing, this has been an issue that we've been talking about for years. The ongoing apartheid in of Israel to Palestine, and we have always been in an environment where even just saying that, even just hinting that Israel might be committing apartheid would get us absolutely massacred. Like people would come for our throats for it. And finally, that's starting to change. I'm seeing numbers now out of polling that if you would have showed me 6 months ago, I would have laughed in your face and told you you're making shit up. Because listen to this. A recent YouGov poll found that for the question of should the U.S. send weapons and supplies to Israel, 53% of Democrats said no. 55% of independents said no. And 43% of Republicans said no. It's basically a 50-50 split in this country right now on an issue that used to be a 90-10 split. If you look at Gallup's polling over, and they've been doing this since 2001, of net sympathy for Israel, meaning the amount of people, the percentage of people that have more empathy for Israel than Palestine. It wasn't until 2023, this year, the March of this year, when they ran the poll, which was before all of this, that Democrats crossed the line into being more favorable to Palestine than Israel. Until then, it was significantly above the line. I mean, we're talking as recently as 2015 that 30%, that was a 30% swing. That 30% more Democrats support Israel than Palestine, and Republicans have always been way up there. They were at 67 in March, and now almost half of them think we should stop supporting Israel outright, and that is crazy to me. I can't believe I'm living in a world where suddenly this is a legitimate debate going on. And part of it makes me sad that so many people had to die to make that happen. But part of it like makes me feel like this massive relief that change could actually be coming on an issue that has felt like a pipe dream for a lot of people who've been advocating for this for a long time. You guys feel similarly? Out there to Rory first. I actually haven't heard Rory talk about this issue yet. What are your thoughts here?
So I do want to start by saying this is an extremely sensitive and important topic. There's no easy answer. It's just a complete quagmire. And I think TJ might have jumped in the TikTok live we did a couple weeks ago, but we've been doing a few TikTok lives and we've been trying to discuss this and talk about this. But I am pro Palestine. I believe that what is happening to the Palestinian people is atrocious. And that being said, I don't want people to take me out of context and say, oh, well, you're pro Hamas then. I do not support militants. I do not support terrorist attacks. What happened to those poor Israeli children, those poor Israeli citizens, is disgusting. But at the same time, that does not give Israel the justification to create one of the largest exodus events in recent history. What Israel is doing to the Palestinian people and what they've done for the past few decades is despicable. And I cannot put into words just how disgusted and how angry it makes me to really look into the details of this discussion. Everything from cutting off water and electrical supplies to Palestine, removing their ability for citizenship. There's people in Palestine that are basically invisible people. They have no personhood. They're stateless. They literally can't move out of Palestine because they can't apply for citizenship because there's no government entity to say that they're a person. There's literally nothing they can do. At this point, Palestine is essentially an open air concentration camp. And the fact that the U.S. is still supporting the very entities that are creating those horrific conditions is disgusting. And I mean, the best way to put it simply is like we have this militant group that's attacking a state for the conditions that they've been put in, and then the state says, oh well, that gives us justification to crack down harder because look how militant and look how dangerous they are. And it's just a lose-lose situation from either side. I think what needs to be done in order to remedy this in the short term, if not the long term, is Israel needs to acknowledge the fact that they have essentially genocided a lot of these people, and they need to not only give the land back, they need to allow them to have statehood. And the two-state solution is the bare minimum, honestly. They need to do something for the Palestinian people. They've actively caused terrorism to flare up in the area, similarly to what we did in Iraq. Because if you look at statistics about Iraq and Afghanistan, after the US invaded, terrorism went up. Far right extremism and authoritarianism and cracking down on innocent people in the name of religion, ethnicity, whatever it might be, does not help the situation.
Yeah. I am, like John said, I am very heartened to see the shift that's happened because it was like Americans, we all our lives we've been told Israelis good, Palestinians bad. That's basically what we've been told. And so any actions Israel's taking, they're like, this the only democracy in the Middle East, which is a funny thing to say when Palestinians don't have democratic rights. You can't really say that. And we give like unwavering support to them, and no amount of support is high enough either. Like I remember when Obama was president, like Republicans would say that Obama was anti-Israel. And like even after he gave like he signed like was it $3.5 billion for Israeli defense, and still they said, oh well, you're anti-Israel. And it's just like the unconditional and unwavering support has just been preached to us. There's still like 30 states or something that have in their like state's constitution that it's illegal to participate in boycotts, divestments, and sanctions in Israel. Like if you want, like it is you can get fired from your job for doing like insanity, saying that it's some foreign country that you have to support it, otherwise you can't work. It's crazy like how deep that well goes. But as far as why public opinion is changing, I mean we all know why. We see more of it now. Like we actually see what's happening and people know more. And you can, how many times can you see like entire city blocks of Gaza just razed to the ground, just nothing but rubble, people like being pulled out of destroyed buildings, like children bloodied in hospitals, and think these guys had it coming, which by the way is the standpoint for the Zionists. So they're like, listen, they elected Hamas in 2006 or something like that, and with a 44% vote, it wasn't even a majority. Therefore, it's okay to kill as many Palestinians as possible. That's their actual like position. And it's been brought up before, but the Palestinians don't just live in the Gaza Strip. They also live in the West Bank, and people in the West Bank are being removed from their homes. They're being killed too. Hamas isn't there, but they still justify it in any way that they can. I don't know if I am on board with the two-state solution. I mean, once again, like I don't know, but I think a one-state solution would be better.
Yeah.
Because like a two-state solution, you're still gonna have like, so whenever you talk to people about this, they'll say, well, listen, Israel offered the Palestinians a two-state solution without telling you what the two-state solution entailed. Where it's like, you don't control your own borders, you can't have a military, you can't have an air force. Like, okay, then no, fuck off. That's not going to work. But, granting full rights as citizens to the Palestinians in one country, that seems to be a more workable solution. Yeah, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard, but there's no easy way this is going to go. So that's where that's my suggestion on this. But I do like the fact that just showing some basic human compassion to a group of people who have no power whatsoever is growing. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Michael Brooks. I don't know if you're familiar with him at all, but Michael Brooks was a he was on Sam Cedar show, The Majority Report, and Michael Brooks was one of the biggest influences in my life, my political life. Like I learned so much from him. Like his analysis of foreign policy is fantastic. He tragically died a couple of years ago at like 36 or something. It was horrible. But he was giving a lesson at some school, and he talked about the complicated issue with Israel and Palestine. He says it's not complicated at all. People say it's complicated, but it ain't. You have one group that has all the money, all the power, and all the backing of the strongest nation in the world, and you have another group that has nothing, and that they control their food, they control their water, they control their electricity, they strip away their rights, they limit their freedom of movement, they segregate what roads they can drive on. That's what's going on here. And so, and people, and yeah, Hamas is a terrorist group. Yeah, I mean, yeah, because like you said, people are gonna ask, hey, do you condemn Hamas and all that? And there is a direct equivalent between the apartheid in Israel and the apartheid in South Africa. It's like and if you don't believe me, Nelson Mandela said the exact same thing. He said that what's happening in Israel is what happened in South Africa, and he had full support for the freedom of the Palestinian people. And it's slow. The progress is slow, but oh, John, you mentioned those stats. Did you see it by age? Like by age, the people who supported
I have not seen the specific numbers, but I do know that like it is a stark contrast of young people supporting Palestine. Yeah.
Yeah. So like 65 and up, 19% of people support the Palestinians for people 65 and up. And when it got down to, like 25 and under, it was like 80% supported. And so it's, and once again, they've had less propaganda that's happened over the decades. So it is good to see. It's still tragic and sad, everything that's going on. And I mean, there's nothing we can do about it. But the fact that the United States government is still, actually, it's not surprising to me. The United States government is still like super strong backing of Israel because they like having a military ally in the Middle East. That's why they're supporting Israel. But it is good to see that popular sentiment, not just in the States, but around the world, is shifting towards the actually oppressed people.
Yeah, TJ, I'm going to disagree with one thing you said there. And you said there's nothing we can do about it. I think the proof is everywhere right now that is wrong. I think that what we have been doing, and when I say we, me and you are very, very small drops in the ocean of all of the amazing work and sacrifice that has been going on from people doing the groundwork and getting the stories out of Palestine and fighting for Palestinian liberation on the global stage. It's been just incremental, tiny little progress, tiny little progress, tiny little progress. And it has made us feel like there's nothing we can do about this. We feel like we've just been screaming into the void. But right now we're seeing the fruits of that labor. Like we're seeing that the decades happen all at once. And it's because all of those years of nothing happening has made the pro-Israel side, has made the Zionist side feel immortal. They like, if you look at what first of all, the fucking the Israeli government is saying, and you look at what really big, like Ben Shapiro out here saying, fuck the UN, and they've been able to say this for years because the status quo has just been, well, if you talk about this subject, the Zionists are going to scream at you and say you're anti-Semitic, and you don't want to be labeled anti-Semitic. So the majority of Americans have just been like, well, we're going to put that over here, and we're not going to talk about it. But the level of the atrocity that is happening now, the city blocks just leveled to the ground, the death tolls in the thousands. It's gotten to the point where it can't be ignored. They've created such a spectacle of it now that it cannot be ignored. And so the people who have just been turning a blind eye, who have just been going, well, I don't want to be called anti-Semitic, so I'm not even going to partake in this issue. They're suddenly going, wait, I'm sorry, what are you saying? That doesn't make any sense. Why would we bomb a city of innocent children because innocent Israelis are killed? That doesn't make any sense at all. And the people who have been ignoring it are seeing that, and we're seeing that shift. We're seeing all of that work happen at once. And as you said, especially with the young people are really who are leading this charge. And it's not a coincidence because of all of the work that people on our level have been doing, people in Palestine have been doing, that has been mostly just seen on social media, because the mainstream media hasn't been willing to say it up until just now. It's because of all that work that has been done, that individual people have been doing by being brave enough to talk about this issue, that we're seeing sentiment change. And if the decades keep happening, like, we can't let them stop happening. We need to continue to push this issue. And people who are listening to this right now need to know that we do have the power to change this. We do not have to accept apartheid. We do not have to accept genocide. And just because we have been forced to do that over the past several decades doesn't mean we are completely powerless to change it, because we're seeing the efforts of the fruits of our labor being distributed all over the place right now. Those numbers, again, 6 months ago, to me, would have been insane. And that is our current living reality, because we haven't given up. And everyone should be talking about this issue right now and informing people, because the facts speak for themselves. Like, there is no getting around it.
Definitely. And I mean, just like you said, the U.S. plays such a giant role in that. I mean, us in combination with the UK were the ones that created this situation to begin with. After World War II, we wanted to have a place to send the Jewish people. We figured we'll send them to their Holy Land. And what was the logistics? Oh, we'll just displace millions of Muslims that are currently living in the land. There's no problems that's going to happen there. That won't create a holy war or anything. But that's the thing of it, is that a lot of Americans just don't care. In fact, they care that Israelis and Jewish people are in that Holy Land, because they think that means there'll be the second coming of Jesus. There's just such a giant sect of America that are part of like this weird death cult, that it's like they want their savior to come back. In order to do that, Israel needs to be an established nation, and the Jewish people need to be in control of Jerusalem. And it's just completely destructive. And the best way that we can work towards that, I do support BDS similarly to how it worked in South Africa. I think we need to start slowly removing our support from Israel militarily, and we need to start supplying humanitarian support. We need to start propping up and incentivizing people in the region to say, hey, we don't need to fight like this. We need to prop each other up and help each other, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings.
Yeah, Roy, what you said about the religious aspect of it is a massive part of this. Mm-hmm. And so for anyone who like wasn't or isn't familiar with evangelical Christianity, the existence of Israel is a big fucking deal to them. Like you said, like it is it's not a hyperbolic statement. They need Israel to exist because they believe it will, bring about the second coming of Jesus Christ. And there's like the eschatology behind it, and how the Antichrist will broker a peace deal with Israel for 7 years, and then he'll break it in 3.5 years, and he'll sacrifice a pig on the altar. And like it is this big, long ordeal, and it means the world to them. Like it means the world to them. They always talk about biblical prophecy and the existence of Israel. So like Israel didn't exist at, I think, 586 BC is when Israel ceased to exist as a nation. And so, when it was reestablished as a nation in 1946 or 1948 or something like that, they saw that as, the beacon of hope. Oh, the second coming is right around the corner. They will always support Israel. It doesn't matter. Like like they've already shown, that they're fine with, war and genocide with the Iraq war and everything like that. They and not an ounce of shame, like you guys mentioned. Like, they supported like the bloodshed and the chaos, and they're like, oh, our bad, and called everyone anti-American traitors when they dared question the Iraq war, and no remorse about it whatsoever. And they're doing the exact same thing with Israel and Palestine, because they do believe that the Palestinians should be expelled, and that Israel should return to the borders that they had, like in the book of Joshua, from Egypt, to the Euphrates River. And that will, bring about the second coming, which ironically is when God kills all the Jews except for 144,000 of them. Like, it is insanity, but they genuinely believe this, and they will never waver in their support for Israel for that reason.
Yeah, and the disgusting thing is, just like you said, a lot of these evangelicals, they don't give a shit about the Jewish people. It's just a big religious chessboard to them, and a big like double-edged sword, or not necessarily double-edged sword. A big thing that goes into it too is a lot of those people are also Islamophobic. Like, Christianity and Islam are big enemies to each other. So in a lot of evangelical people's mind, the fact that like they can say like, oh, we made Israel, which means Jesus is going to come back, and Israel is screwing over Muslims, that's just a win-win for me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's disgusting.
It is.
The one thing and it's very, because I actually didn't know all this about evangelical.
It's insane,
like,
man.
I didn't know this, but it does.
I grew up around these people, man. It's insane. These people exist.
Yeah, I'm sure. I just thought that this was one of those things where they just incoherently like believed it because their pastor told them, like being against universal healthcare or something. Not because there was like actual religious reason for it. So that's interesting. But I do think that like another important thing to just say about this conflict is that I think that religion plays a much smaller role in all of this than most people think. Like, I think that the average American thinks that this is a religious war. And there are religious zealots on both sides. But like, I don't think that the 16-year-old kid who is fighting, even if like the 16-year-old Hamas right now, who's like fighting and like killing people, like, I don't think it's because they hate Jewish people. I think it's because they hate that they've been stuck in an open air prison their entire lives. And I don't think it's that much of a stretch to believe that. Like, yeah, they might also have the religious fanaticism, but like, what's the more likely cause of their animosity? It's the fact that they've been suffering under apartheid their entire lives. That's the main thing here. And for Israel, it's not necessarily, Islamophobia. It's they want to be a fascist state and control these people, and they just say it, like, we want to be a Jewish ethno state. It isn't like that complicated. It can be, but people always say to me, what's your solution then? And it's like, I don't know. I don't need a solution to know that this is not the right one. Like if someone were to kill my mother, I don't know how I would react. I don't know what the right thing to do would be. But I do know with absolute certainty that dropping a bomb on their house would be the wrong answer. I don't need to know the solution to that conflict to know that bombing in the neighborhood they live in would be wrong. It doesn't have to be that complicated.
Following Israel's logic, obviously you have to kill the murderer's child.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because by their own logic, if that child now has a right to bomb them, like by the logic of Zionists, every innocent person who's had a family member killed in Palestine, if they had access to the military technology that Israel do, would be completely justified to blow neighborhoods in Israel off the map. And it's so logically incoherent. The only natural end to that is one of the sides completely dies. That is the only possible conclusion. And people argue that Israel has a right to level a city to the ground, as if that isn't the natural conclusion of any sort of conflict like that. Blows my mind.
You're right. Like, Americans, they always say this. Like, my whole life I've been hearing this, that, well, the fights between the Israelis and the Palestinians, this is a religious war that goes back thousands. No, it's not. No, it is not. Like, it is primarily a war of occupation and of land. That's what it actually is about. Like, they happen to be two different religions, but it's like, you know, like I used to see the Family Guy episode where Peter goes to Israel and he doesn't get what's going on. He's like, you put an Arab guy and an Israeli guy in front of me, I can't tell the difference. Like, you guys look the same to me. But like, it's really just like a grab by the state. And another thing, like Roy, what you mentioned, yes, this is what I can't believe we didn't learn our lesson after the war on terror. Like the 20-year war on terror, we haven't learned this lesson, that when you indiscriminately start killing, like, something bad happened to us, like 9/11, okay? And our response is to just indiscriminately start killing hundreds of thousands of people, a lot of them innocent, driving people out of their homes. What do you think you're going to do? You're going to create more terrorists. So if you're saying that, hey, Hamas is bad and they did these attacks on us, so we're going to destroy 5 city blocks, do you think that's going to make the Palestinians more docile, or do you think it's going to make them hate you even more? Like, it doesn't even make any sense, but that's just the default that Israel has been going to. And a lot of Americans say, yeah, what's the problem with that? And it's like, man, we didn't learn a thing at all. It's pretty sad.